Okay, we're just giving our attendees a couple of minutes to come in.
Maria,
Mhm.
when do I start talking?
I will let you know.
Okay.
Are you my first presenter?
I'm the intro, and then it's Janine, who I'll turn it over to.
Okay, go right ahead, Jennifer. Take it
Good
away.
afternoon, and welcome to another edition of You've Got to Read This. My name is Jennifer Eisman, Manager of Digital Learning and Resource Discovery. I'm joined today by Janine West, our Library Director, and Danielle Belanger, Manager of Library Programs and User Experience. We have a great list of books lined up for you this afternoon. We hope we can help you find your perfect summer reads. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Janine West.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here, and I hope that you will enjoy another edition of You've Got to Read This. I'm going to start with presenting 6 books, 6 of my favorite books of the past year. And then I'll continue with sharing with you a few of my favorite authors, the last book of theirs that I read, but also just give you a sneak peek of their most recent release. So without further ado, I will start. And I'll start with The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. In Heller's captivating debut, 50-year-old Elle must decide between the life she has built with her husband and the life she always imagined she would have with her childhood sweetheart, Jonah. The Paper Palace refers to the idyllic cottage in Cape Cod where she spent her summers growing up and where she returns with her family every year. The author skillfully juxtaposes present-day events with extensive flashbacks to Elle's past, revealing a long-hidden family legacy of devastating abuse. It's a very dark, moody, propulsive story, a love triangle, decades in the making, with far-reaching implications for every single character in the book. Fans of dysfunctionally family sagas, which admittedly I am one, will fly through these pages, eager to know what happens next. This is a great summer read, with an ending which will have you pondering and flipping back to the beginning for clues. However, the answer you will find out is pretty clear. My next pick is Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. Wildness and rewilding are the central themes of Charlotte McConaughey's book, which tells the story of Inti Flynn and her twin sister Aggie, who arrive in Scotland to lead a team of biologists tasked with reintroducing 14 gray wolves into the remote highlands. The local farmers don't support the plan, and Inti struggles not only to protect the wolves, but to protect her project from failure. When a local man is found dead, Inti knows that the wolves will be blamed. But if it wasn't the wolves, the question is, who was it? The story also explores the devastating effects of emotional trauma and begs the question, who should we fear most, man or beast? The premise of reintroducing wolves to their old habitats I found particularly fascinating. Wolves used to be a part of the Scottish landscape, something I did not know. However, throughout the centuries, local sheep farmers, in order to protect their flocks, supported the elimination of wolves from Scotland, which was finally accomplished in about the end of the 17th century. In doing so, they inadvertently created an abundance of deer, which in turn ate all of the vegetation and reduced the tree cover, thereby hastening climate change. This is a hard to put down, fast-paced read, which tackles difficult issues. It also includes a mystery, a love interest, and the bleak landscape is gorgeously rendered. I learned much about the process of rewilding, which I said I did not know before, the negative effects that deer have on the environment without the natural predators that they need to control them, as well as the behavior of wolves in general. I highly recommend this powerful and engaging book. On to the next pick, which is Behold the Dreamers by Mbola Mubwe. Behold the Dreamers opens in 2007 in New York City with a Cameroonian immigrant named Jende Jonga, who finds himself with a job chauffeuring for Lehman Brothers executive Clark Edwards. Jende, who was originally in the United States on a 3-month visa, is now there illegally. His wife is there on a student visa. At first, all goes pretty well, but problems in the Edwards marriage lead for problems, therefore, with the Jongas. When Lehman falls, both families are caught up in the terrible aftermath of the 2008 recession. The novel explores the relationship between a Black immigrant family and a white, wealthy one during the time of the recession, taking a very, very hard look at racism as well as class. It also explores topics such as the complexity of American immigration policies, but most importantly, about the pursuance of the American dream and its ultimate failure. The author herself is from Cameroon, and this is her first novel. When it was published, both the New York Times and the Washington Post named it one of the most notable books of 2016. Mabwe was awarded the PEN/Faulkner Award for Fiction, and most interestingly enough, the Blue Metropolis Words to Change Award, which she accepted while she was in Montreal for the Blue Metropolis Festival in 2017. I love this book, particularly for all of the issues that it raises. It's sad and even tragic, reminding us that for immigrants, the US is still seen as the promised land, and also that money doesn't always buy happiness. Her second novel, which I have yet to read, but I want to, was published just last year and is called How Beautiful We Were. And it is about an environmental crisis in a fictional African village brought about by a big American oil company. So I look forward to reading that. Next up is The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. I love Ann Patchett and I read everything that she writes. The Dutch House is no exception. This is a tale set over the course of 5 decades, which traces a young man's rise from poverty to wealth and back again, as his prospects center around his family's lavish Philadelphia estate, which is referred to as the Dutch House. This is a quintessential family drama, narrated by the son Danny, who grew up in the house with his sister Maeve. In the tradition of all fairy tales, it includes the wicked stepmother and her 2 children who wrestled the family home from them when their father dies. The siblings structure their entire lives around the loss of this home. And this is a splendid novel of not only obsession, but also forgiveness. On to Midnight Library by Matt Haig, again, one of my favorite books. The Midnight Library imagines the place between life and death as a vast library filled with books detailing other lives you could have had if you made different choices. This is a second chance at life to undo all of those regrets, make different decisions, take a different life, and ultimately find the elusive happiness. And this is where Haig's character, Nora, finds herself after trying to commit suicide. As Nora travels through all of her regrets, guided by her old school librarian, Mrs. Elm, we are asked to ponder the question of what is truly fulfilling in life and what makes life worth living in the first place. It is a book full of life questions, philosophy, metaphors, symbolism with a touch of quantum physics and string theory. Being a librarian, this had to be one of my favorite books of the past year. The premise is smart and inventive, and the ending immensely satisfying, which is what you want in a great book. Finally, it's Horse by Geraldine Brooks. This is a brand new release. I just picked it up and I just finished it last night. Highly, highly recommend this book. With her meticulous research, Geraldine Brooks, who wrote People of the Book and March, you may remember those 2 titles, and is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, immerses the reader in the fascinating world of American horse racing. It takes place in the southern US from 1850 to 1861. This is a great work of historical fiction at the hands of a master, which follows parallel narratives in both the past and in the present. The horse's real-life 19th century champion named Lexington. Brooks skillfully integrates his story, with the story taking place in the present, concerning a lost and now found painting done of him, as well as the story of a skeleton which was preserved and available, I guess, for viewing in the Smithsonian. And these are all true facts. However, this is not just a book about horse racing. It's also a book about race, not only in the antebellum South, but in present day Washington, D.C. It highlights the often unacknowledged roles played by enslaved Black groomsmen as well as their trainers, who cared for these racehorses of the wealthy white men that they served, but also how the issue of race still permeates society today. And just as an aside, Brooks admittedly decided to tackle the current issue of cultural appropriation head on with a book filled with Black lead characters and written by her, a white author. So a fascinating read, and I really, really recommend it. It's probably going to be one of my favorite books of the year. So now I want to go on to some picks, as I said, where I've read the recent book that they've written. They're all favorite authors of mine, and I have no trouble recommending their most recent release. So I'll start off with All Adults Here by Emma Straub. So Emma Straub writes family dramas with charm and wit. All Adults Here is a warm and funny and keenly perceptive novel about the life cycle of one particular family. As the adult kids become parents, the grandchildren become teenagers, and the matriarch of the family confronts the legacy of all of her past mistakes. Her most recent book is called This Time Tomorrow. And it begs the question, if you could go back in time and make different decisions, would you? Again, similar to The Midnight Library. That question is the center of Emma Straub's big-hearted new novel, This Time Tomorrow, which is a moving father-daughter story with a very, very playful twist on the idea of time travel. Next up is The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. Kate Quinn writes historical novels featuring unsung women heroes of the 20th century, which are based on real characters who, she says, yearn for a spotlight. So she wants to bring their life to the forefront. She is the reigning queen of historical fiction these days, and once again, she enthralled me with her novel, The Rose Code, which is set in World War II, featuring the famous code breakers of Bletchley Park. The author focuses on the close relationship between three extraordinary women who are determined to do more than their bit to fight the enemy. Her latest book, The Diamond Eye, is said to be unforgettable. It's a tale of a very quiet librarian, can't wait to read it, who becomes history's deadliest female sniper. The Guest List by Lucy Foley. You might remember this book from last year. It was one of the most popular books of 2021. Lucy Follow writes fast-paced thrillers in the locked room mystery genre, which is actually perfect for summer reading. In The Guest List, a wedding celebration turns dark and deadly in this deliciously wicked and atmospheric thriller, reminiscent of Agatha Christie, which is set on a remote island off Ireland. And she follows it up with her new book called The Paris Apartment, which is another classic whodunit, set in a Paris apartment building where each of the residents has something to hide. So I can't wait to read that. The Lost Letter by Jillian Cantor. Jillian Cantor is known for writing historical fiction on a very real and human level, and The Lost Letter is no exception. It's a novel of love and survival, inspired by real resistance workers during World War II Austria, and a mysterious love letter that connects generations of Jewish families. It is heartbreaking, but also heartwarming. And it's perfect for fans who love Sarah's Key and the Lilac Girls. Her new book is called Beautiful Little Fools, and in it, Cantor reimagined and expands on the literary classic, The Great Gatsby, which he tells in three women's alternating voices. I can't wait to read this. And one of the voices is Daisy Buchanan, which you'll remember from The Great Gatsby is the lead female character. Redhead by the Side of the Road by Ann Tyler. 24 novels and a Pulitzer Prize later, Ann Tyler has proven she has a knack for portraying common and domestic aspects of family life, peppered with a cast of very, very quirky characters. Redhead by the Side of the Road is a sparkling novel about misperceptions, second chances, and the sometimes elusive power of human connection, featuring a lonely and quirky self-employed tech expert. It's short, it's charming, and endearing. Her new book, French Braid, is said to be funny, joyful, brilliantly perceptive, and a journey deep into one of Baltimore's family's foibles, from a boyfriend with a red Chevy in the 1950s up to a longed-for reunion with a grandchild in our pandemic present. So I can't wait to read that. Long Petal of the Sea by Isabella Allende. Isabella Allende draws deeply on South America's turbulent history as well as personal experience to craft magical multi-generational sagas, novels, short stories, and memoirs. Long Petal of the Sea is an epic novel spanning decades and crossing continents, which follows two young people as they flee the Spanish Civil War and go to Chile. Her new book, Violetta, is the story of Violetta del Valle, which is a fictional character, not a real character. She's a woman whose lifespan spans 100 years, and as so bears witness to all of the greatest upheavals of the 20th century. Next up is Lions of Fifth Avenue by Fiona Davis. Fiona Davis is known for historical novels, often told in dual timelines, a favorite of mine, which are all set in iconic New York City buildings, which is very interesting in itself. So The Lions of Fifth Avenue is told in parallel narratives, one set in the past, one in the present, and it's about family secrets and stolen manuscripts, all taking place within the New York's City Public Library. Magnolia Palace, her newest book, also told in two timelines, features two models decades apart and the mysterious disappearance of an heirloom from the New York's Frick Museum. Finally, Everybody's Son, oh no, not finally, yes, finally, Everybody's Son by Thridi Umrigar. Thridi Umrigar is known for her moving and psychologically intimate stories about friendships, romantic relationships, and family dynamics in contemporary India. Everybody's Son, which is a departure from this, explores the issues of race, class, privilege, and power in the United States in a story that centers around a Black boy whose mother is in jail and who is then adopted by a prominent white family. Honor goes back to her roots and is a riveting and immersive novel which tells the story of two couples and the sometimes dangerous and heartbreaking challenges of love across a cultural divide. So that's it for me. I want to thank you very, very much for listening and happy reading. I'll now pass it on to Danielle, who will entertain you with her picks.
Oh, we can't hear you, Danielle. Now we can hear you. Pardon the technical difficulties.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So today I'm excited to share recommendations with you for your summer reading. The 4 titles I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit more about today are Love Marriage by Monica Ali, here, Bluebird by Genevieve Graham, One Italian Summer by Rebecca Cyril, and Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. To begin with, Love Marriage by Monica Ali. Monica Ali was born in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and grew up in England. She was named one of the 20 best young British novelists under 40 by Granta. She's the author of 4 previous novels, including Untold Story and Brick Lane, which was shortlisted for the Booker Prize and the Guardian Book Prize, nominated for the National Book Critics Circle Award and the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, and was named the winner of the 2003 Discover Award for Fiction and a New York Times Editor's Choice book that same year. She lives in London with her husband and 2 children. So here is the synopsis for Love Marriage. Yasmin Garami is 26 and training to be a doctor like her Indian-born father, and engaged to the charismatic upper-class Joe Sangster, whose formidable mother, Harriet, is a famous feminist. The gulf between families is vast, so too is the gulf in sexual experience between Yasmin and Joe. As the wedding day draws near, misunderstandings, infidelities, and long-held secrets upend both Yasmin's relationship and that of her parents, a love marriage according to the family lore that Yasmin has believed all her life. A gloriously acute observer of class, sexual mores, and the mysteries of the human heart, Monica Ali has written a captivating social comedy and a profoundly moving revelatory story of 2 cultures, 2 families, and 2 people trying to understand one another. So why should you read it? It's set in London. Love Marriage is a multi-layered, very clever examination of race, class, and identity. Yasmin is from a Bengali Muslim family who immigrated to England from Calcutta. Love Marriage is a story about who we are and who we love, with all the complications and contradictions of life, desire, marriage, and family. What starts as a captivating social comedy develops into a heartbreaking and gripping story of 2 cultures, 2 families, and 2 people trying to understand one another. The second recommendation is the one by Genevieve Graham, Bluebird. Genevieve Graham is the USA Today and #1 best-selling author of The Forgotten Home Child, Letters Across the Sea, Tides of Honor, Promises to Keep, Come From Away, and At the Mountain's Edge. Bluebird was published last April. She's passionate about breathing life back into Canadian history through tales of love and adventure. Here's a synopsis of Bluebird. Present day, Cassie Simmons, a museum curator, is enthusiastic about solving mysteries from the past, and she has a personal interest in the history of the rum runners who ferried illegal booze across the Detroit River during Prohibition. So when a cache of whiskey labeled Bailey's Brothers Best is unearthed during a local home renovation, Cassie hopes to find the answers she's been searching for about the legendary family of bootleggers. 1917, Corporal Jeremiah Bailey of the 1st Canadian Tunneling Company is tasked with planting mines in the tunnels beneath enemy trenches. After Jerry is badly wounded in an explosion, he finds himself in a Belgian field hospital under the care of Adele Savard, one of Canada's nursing sisters, nicknamed Bluebirds for their blue gowns and white hats. As Jerry recovers, he forms a strong connection with Adele, who's from a place near his hometown of Windsor along the Detroit River. In the midst of war, she's a welcome reminder of home. And when Jerry is sent back to the front, he can only hope that he'll see his Bluebird again. By war's end, both Jerry and Adele return home to Windsor, scarred by the horrors of what they endured overseas. When they cross paths one day, they have a chance to start over. But the city is in the grip of Prohibition, which brings exciting opportunities as well as new dangerous conflicts that threaten to destroy everything they have fought for. Pulled from the pages of history, Bluebird is a compelling, luminous novel about the strength of the human spirit and the power of love to call us home. Why should you read it? Bluebird is an action-packed book filled with fast pacing and strong character development. It tackles prohibition, PTSD, and the Spanish flu while still being packed with emotion and intensity. If you like the danger and action of Peaky Blinders mixed with some Canadian history, then you will love Bloop. The third recommendation I have is One Italian Summer by Rebecca Cyril. Rebecca Cyril is the New York Times bestselling author of In 5 Years, The Dinner List, and the young adult novels The Edge of Falling and When You Were Mine. Cyril also developed the hit TV adaptation Famous in Love, based on her YA series of the same name. She's a graduate of USC and the New School and lives in Los Angeles. Here's a synopsis of One Italian Summer. When Katie's mother dies, she is left reeling. Carol wasn't just Katie's mom, but her best friend and first phone call. She had all the answers, and now when Katie needs her the most, she's gone. To make matters worse, their planned mother-daughter trip of a lifetime looms to Positano, the magical town where Carol spent the summer right before she met Katie's father. Katie has been waiting for years for Carol to take her, and now she's faced with embarking on the adventure alone. But as soon as she steps foot on the Amalfi Coast, Katie begins to feel her mother's spirit. Buoyed by the stunning waters, beautiful cliffside, delightful residents, and of course, delectable food, Katie feels herself coming back to life. So why should you read this one? One Italian Summer is a thoughtful, fun escape, blending contemplations of love and loss with a touch of adventure. It's a picturesque novel about a mother-daughter relationship, and perhaps the perfect slow-paced poolside or beach read, if you travel, to dive into this summer. The fourth recommendation I'd like to share with you is the heartwarming debut novel, Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, Shelby Van Pelt is now missing the mountains in the Chicago area with her husband and 2 children. Here's a synopsis of Remarkably Bright Creatures. After Tova Sullivan's husband died, she began working the night shift at Sowell Bay Aquarium, mopping floors and tidying up. Keeping busy has always helped her cope, which she's been doing since her 18-year-old son, Eric, mysteriously vanished on a boat in Puget Sound over 30 years ago. As she works, Tova becomes acquainted with curmudgeonly Marcellus, a giant Pacific octopus living at the aquarium. Marcellus knows more than anyone can imagine, but wouldn't dream of lifting one of his 8 tentacles for his human captors until he forms an unlikely friendship with Tova. Ever the detective, Marcellus deduces what happened the night Tova's son disappeared. As his affection for Tova grows, Marcellus must use every trick his old invertebrate body can muster to unearth the truth for her before it's too late. Why should you read this one? Because Remarkably Bright Creatures is a story that reminds us of the importance of connection, friendship, and family, and a book I suspect will stay with you long after you've read it. So this is the book. If you only read one book this summer, read this one, Remarkably Bright Creatures. More great summer picks I have to recommend for you. So I also have this one, This Might Hurt by Stephanie Robel. Welcome to Wisewood. We'll keep your secrets if you keep ours. Natalie Collins hasn't heard from her sister in more than half a year. The last time they spoke, Kit was slogging from mundane workdays to obligatory happy hours to crying in the shower about their mother's passing. She told Natalie she was sure there was something more out there. And then she found Wisewood. On a private island off of the coast of Maine, Wisewood's guests commit to 6-month stays. During this time, they're prohibited from contact with the rest of the world. No internet, no phones, no exceptions. But the rules are there for a good reason, to keep guests focused on achieving true fearlessness so they can become their maximized selves. Natalie thinks it's a bad idea, but Kit has had enough of her sister's cynicism and voluntarily disappears off the grid. 6 months later, Natalie receives a menacing email from a Wisewood account threatening to reveal the secret she's been keeping from Kit. Panicked, Natalie hurries north to come clean to her sister and bring her home. But she's about to learn that Wisewood won't let either of them go without a fight. The Darkness and the Light, a thriller by Danielle. After Brianna O'Brien takes her own life, Dr. David Spears blames himself. Though he understands suicides can be a tragic occurrence in a psychiatric practice, this loss hits him particularly hard. With Brianna, he's convinced he missed crucial warning signs. When David suspects Brianna's friend, Amka Obed, whom he also had been treating virtually as in crisis, he flies to the remote Arctic community of Utqiagvik, Alaska, only to discover that she has disappeared. While the regional police are confident that Amka will turn up safe, David and the town social worker, Taylor Holmes, have serious doubts. Each battling their own demons, David and Taylor launch an investigation, determined to help uncover the truth about what happened to Amka. David wonders if a new antidepressant he recently prescribed to both Amka and Brianna played a role in what took place. Taylor, who's familiar with the locals, suspects a local drug lord with connections to Amka's boyfriend. Who was right? Where is Amka? Is she still alive? And also, you don't want to miss these three great historical fiction novels. So there's The Cartographer's Secret by Taya Cooper, Hunter Valley, 1880. Evie Ludgrove loves to chart the landscapes around her home, hardly surprising since she grew up in the shadow of her father's obsession with the great Australian explorer, Dr. Ludwig Leichhardt. So when an advertisement appears in the Bulletin magazine offering a £1,000 reward for proof of where Leichhardt met his fate, Evie is determined to use her father's papers to unravel the secret. But when Evie sets out to prove her theory, she vanishes without a trace, leaving behind a mystery that haunts her family for 30 years. 1911, Letitia Rawlings arrives at the family estate in her Ford Model T to inform her great aunt Olivia of a loss in their family. But Letitia is also escaping her own problems, her brother's sudden death, her mother's scheming, and her dissatisfaction with the life planned out for her. So when Letitia discovers a beautifully illustrated map that might hold a clue to the fate of her missing aunt, Evie Ludgrove, she sets out to discover the truth. But all is not as it seems, and Letitia begins to realize that solving the mystery of her family's past could offer as much peril as redemption. Next is The Last Dance of the Debutante by Julia Kelly. When it's announced in 1958 that it will be the last year debutantes are to be presented at court, thousands of eager mothers and hopeful daughters flood the palace with letters seeking the year's most coveted invitation, a chance for their daughters to curtsy to the young Queen Elizabeth and officially come out into society. In an effort to appease her traditional mother, aspiring university student Lily Nichols agrees to become a debutante and do the season, a glittering and grueling string of countless balls and cocktail parties. In doing so, she befriends two very different women, the cool and aloof Leanna Hartford, whose apparent perfection hides a darker side, and the ambitious Catherine Norman, who dreams of a career once she helps her parents find their place among them. But the glorious effervescence of the season evaporates once Lily learns a devastating secret that threatens to destroy her entire family. Faced with a dark past, she's forced to ask herself what really matters, her family legacy or her own happiness. And finally, in historical fiction recommendations, Moonlight and the Pearler's Daughter by Lizzie Coop. Everything has a price, and the truth may cost more than pearls. As the pearling ships return to Bannon Bay after a long diving season, 20-year-old Eliza Brightwell awaits the arrival of her father's boat. But when his lugger finally limps in, it brings a tale of tragedy. Charles Brightwell, master pearler, has gone missing at sea. Whispers from the townsfolk point to mutiny or murder. Headstrong Eliza knows it's up to her to find out who or what is responsible for her father's disappearance. Searching for the truth, she delves beneath the glamorous veneer of the South Sea pearling trade, only to discover that the sun-scorched streets of Bannon Bay, a town she once thought she knew so well, are teeming with corruption, prejudice, and blackmail. How far is Eliza willing to go to save the ones she loves? And what family secrets will come to haunt her along the way? So these are my main recommendations for your summer reads, but I also have another list that I believe Maria's about to put up in just a second that I like to call my FOMO list, or fear of missing out list. So the titles here, the titles that I have not read yet, but I'm looking forward to, and I think you will be as well. The first one is by Taylor Jenkins Reads. So it's called Carrie, Soto is Back. It's a powerful novel about the cost of greatness. A legendary athlete attempts a comeback when the world considers her past her prime. Second one is a novel by Cowley, Fajardo-Anstine. It's called Woman of Light, a dazzling epic of betrayal, love, and fate that spans 5 generations of an indigenous Chicano family in the American West. Next one is by Beatrice Williams, The Lost Summers of Newport, a novel of money and secrets set among the famous summer mansions of Newport, Rhode Island, spanning over a century from the Gilded Age to the present day. Also the memoir by Viola Davis, Finding Me. She says this of her memoir: finding me is a deep reflection, a promise, and a love letter of sorts to self. My hope is that my story will inspire you to light up your own life with creative expression and rediscover who you were before the world put a label on you. And lastly, The Honeybee Emeralds by Amy Techter. While interning at a struggling Parisian magazine, Alice Amadi is plunged into a glittering world of diamonds and emeralds, courtesans and spices, and the long-buried secrets surrounding the necklace and its glamorous former owners. Oh, I'm sorry, I have a few more. Also, I have by Carol Wallace, Our Kind of People. Perfect for fans of Bridgerton. You'll love following the Wilcox family's journey through riches and ruin in this exuberant novel of manners for our own Gilded Age. Also by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen, The Golden Couple. A perfect couple are not all they seem to be in a gripping psychological thriller. And lastly, a nonfiction for you, Maiden Voyages, magnificent ocean liners and the women who traveled and worked aboard them by Sian Evans. Explores how women's lives were transformed by the golden age of ocean liner travel between Europe and North America. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry about the technical problems, and I will now pass it over to my colleague, Jen.
Please unmute, Jen.
Thanks, Danielle. Those certainly sound like some very interesting titles. I'm going to be sure to pick something up, or at least some of them up. My first title that I'll be talking to you about today is The Violin Conspiracy. Let's see, hopefully this will work. This is Brendan Slocum's debut novel. It is a Good Morning America book club pick. The Seattle Times calls it one of the most anticipated books of the year. Goodreads calls it one of the most anticipated mysteries and thrillers, while Publishers Weekly lists it amongst their top 10 mystery books. The story surrounds Ray McMillan, who is given a violin by his beloved grandmother. He then discovers the instrument is a genuine Stradivarius, worth a fortune. So think about like $10 million, and you can see it displayed there on the screen. Coming out of the woodwork is a family who claims the violin belongs to them, while Ray's own family is blind to his musical abilities, but has no problem seeing the dollar signs attached to him and that special instrument. So a little history lesson here for you. Stradivarius, often known as a Strad, and as I mentioned, there it is on the screen, is one of the violins and other string instruments built by the members of the Italian family Stradivari, particularly Antonio Stradivari, and that's that handsome man that you see on the screen. He was born in 1644 and remained active until his death in 1737. His interpretation of geometry and design for the violin has served as a conceptual model for violin makers for more than 250 years. Stradivari also made harps, guitars, and cellos, more than 1,100 instruments in all by current estimate. And about 650 of these instruments survive today. And the reason why I'm telling you all of this is because they are considered some of the finest instruments ever made, and they're extremely valuable collector's items. So back to the story of the Violin Conspiracy. Right on the cusp of a very important Tchaikovsky competition in Moscow, the instrument is stolen from Ray's hotel room and held for ransom. And this leaves Ray scrambling, frantic to find the violin and prepare for a competition. The Violin Conspiracy will pivot back and forth from past to present. The mystery is the bones of the story, but this book is far more than just a standard mystery. The real meat of the novel is Ray's life as a violinist, what it takes to be a superior violinist, the money involved in pursuit of being a classical violinist, and what he needs to overcome because he's not white. So no one expects a Black man to be able to play concert violin solos. It's an eye-opening story giving the reader a look at the classical music world, which can sometimes be adversarial, especially when it comes to competitions, and how a young Black man overcame racism inherent in the music world. The author, Brendan Slocum, is a professional musician, and this really comes through with his descriptions of music that appear throughout the story. He writes about music with both technical precision and very evocative metaphors. Don't forget to read the author's note at the end. Some of the scenes in the book are dramatic, but sadly, the author explains that these were episodes from his own life that he built into the story. This book will keep readers on the edge of their seats until the very last page. My next title for you is The Magnificent Lives of Marjorie Post by Allison Pataki, which is a national bestseller. This is the story of the amazing life led by Marjorie Post, the daughter of serial giant C.W. Post. And she's the lovely woman that you see on the screen with all of her finery and her real life mansion, which is called Mar-a-Lago. She built an empire based on her father's decision to start a simple remedy for women on what to have for breakfast in order to save time in the kitchen. The cereal C.W. Post conjured up, most of us know this, is the cereal called Grape Nuts, and its popularity propelled the Post family from one that was struggling to a family that amassed millions. The theme of the book seems to be that money can't buy happiness. Marjorie certainly had a lot of money, but she was married 4 times. The first was a blue-blooded party boy, the second was a charismatic financier, then came the international diplomat, and lastly, the wealthy businessman whose shocking secrets would shake Marjorie and all of society. But one after another, Marjorie's husbands betrayed her and she divorced them. This in a time when one divorce was considered scandalous, let alone 4. Despite challenge and turmoil in her personal life, Marjorie was an heiress, businesswoman, American diplomat, an avid art collector, and dedicated philanthropist. A statement she tried to live by was that wealth is a great responsibility more than it is a privilege. Post lived her long life to the fullest. Hers was a grand and epic story from start to finish, one that the author captures in lavish and historical detail. In many ways, the twists and turns of her inspiring life seem so grandiose and dramatic that it all seems too good to be true as the raw material for a historical novel, except it is true. She numbered among her close friends Presidents Franklin D. Roosevelt, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, as well as world leaders Winston Churchill, King Leopold III of Belgium, King George V, and Queen Mary of England, as well as many other notable figures. This is truly an amazing story of a woman determined to succeed in life, and succeed she did, being the first woman to sit on the corporate board of directors of General Foods. Doing all this was amazing, especially when we remember it was a time when women were supposed to take a backseat to men. Marjorie Post was not only one of the wealthiest individuals in the United States, she was a trailblazer for women in business and society. If you love well-researched historical fiction mixed with detailed investigative knowledge, then Allison Pataki's book is one that you should pick up. My third title today is Velvet Was the Night by Sylvia Morano Garcia. It is a Good Morning America buzz pick. It has been called one of the best books of the year by the New York Times Book Review, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, New York Public Library, and Library Journal. The Washington Post has even dubbed it an adrenalized, darkly romantic journey. So Velvet Was the Night is a historical sort of noir / pulp fiction kind of novel. The main character, Maid, works as a legal secretary in Mexico City. but that's just her day job. At night, she reads romantic comedies, and you can see on screen an example of what romantic comedies look like. And she dreams of a different life for herself. She gets caught up in the life of her neighbor, Lenora, and then she suddenly disappears. And of course, Lenora never comes back. As Maid tries to discover what happened to Lenora, she meets a reluctant government thug named Elvis, who is also desperate to find Lenora. As Maid and Elvis combine their search, they discover Lenore may have incriminating secrets against a powerful official, secrets that some people will go to great and dangerous lengths to keep buried. The story transports you to 1970s Mexico during the politically charged Dirty War, and you can see on the screen some historical photos of that time. The Dirty War is when the Mexican government abducted, incarcerated, and murdered citizen activists in 1970s through a group known as the Brigada Blanca. Rock music was also a casualty, as backlash against it was a symbolic way for the government to tighten its grip on the nation. So why am I giving you this history lesson? When examining the choices that characters make in the story, you have to keep in mind that there was a current of fear surrounding even the suggestion of opposition, and that fear ended up being well warranted. What makes this novel is the characters. They are fascinating in their gray morals and dishonorable intentions, yet likable and sympathetic enough to keep us reading. There's violence, a little sex, loads of naughty words, and lots of intrigue. Velvet is the Night is a slow-burning crime novel that is compelling and superbly written. It was a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize and was selected for CBC Canada Reads Longlist. My last selection today is The Maid by Nita Prose. This book was a #1 national bestseller, a Good Morning America book club pick. Glamour magazine calls it a twist and turn whodunit set in a 5-star hotel from the perspective of the maid who finds the body. Think Clue-like page turner here. It's one of the New York Times Editor's Choice picks, as well as one of the most anticipated books of 2022, as voted by Glamour, W Magazine, The Globe and Mail, Chatelaine, and Canadian Living. Universal Pictures has even picked up the film rights to adapt the book into a movie. The actress portraying Molly will be the Academy Award nominee Florence Pugh, and you see her there on the screen. So basically what I'm saying here is that everybody is talking about this novel, and if you want something on the lighter side for summer, then you should pick up The Maid. You will not be disappointed. While this is Nita Prose's first novel, she is the vice president and editorial director at Simon Schuster Canada, and this sort of helps explain how the book feels so polished and that the pacing feels just right for the story that it's telling. The story opens with the maid, Molly Gray, discovering the dead body of Mr. Black, a wealthy real estate tycoon, in the suite of the upscale Regency Grand Hotel. However, this isn't the type of mess that can be easily cleaned up, as I'm sure you can imagine. In terms of her character, Molly is very trusting and takes great pride in her work in keeping everything clean and tidy. Unfortunately, she has a lot of difficulty in social situations, and everyone thinks that she's a bit weird. So actually, she appears to be, from my perspective, neuroatypical, and she has trouble reading things like facial expressions, body language, and social cues. However, as the reader, I actually find that it is her personality that lends the book a lot of its charm. While some readers may guess the killer immediately, it doesn't really matter, as the book is more about Molly, who has no clue what's going on. In addition to the dead body of Mr. Black, there are other things happening in the hotel around Molly that she completely misses, but obviously I don't want to give too much away of the plot. Since this is a cozy mystery, readers should note that it is on the lighter side, as I mentioned before, and the ending gets wrapped up rather neatly. But at its core, it's an uncomplicated and warm-hearted mystery. So, like my colleagues, I would like to leave you with a few suggestions of things that you may want to pick up and discover over the summer. And the first one is The Girl in the Painting by Tia Cooper. And if the author seems familiar, you'll have just seen it on Danielle's slide for the cartographer's daughter. The Girl in the Painting is the story of orphan Jane Piper, and she's 9 years old when philanthropists Michael and Elizabeth Quinn take her into their home to further her schooling. While out one day, Elizabeth sees a painting that shatters her peace of mind, revealing a decades-old mystery demanding to be solved. And of course, who better than math prodigy Jane Piper? If you enjoy historical fiction, but you want to try something new, as this story is set in Australia between 1860s and 1913, then this is for you. It is an engrossing story featuring a compelling mystery that will keep you turning the pages. Next up is The Woman in the Library by Cyril Gentile. This mystery within a mystery is set in the ornate reading room at the Boston Public Library. The tranquility of the moment is shattered by a woman's screams. When security guards force people to stay put, four strangers strike up a conversation. While each has their reasons for being in the library that day, it just so happens that one is a murderer. The Woman in the Library is a thrilling read that examines the complicated nature of friendship and shows us that words can be the most treacherous weapons of all. The book is a treat for readers who love books about books and who like to keep their mysteries to keep them guessing until the very last page. This is a US Today bestseller and a Seattle Times must-read for the summer of 2022. It is also on the list of most anticipated books, for Goodreads. Next is The Liz Taylor Ring by Brenda Janowitz. The story surrounds three siblings, a priceless family ring, and one legendary love story. As one reviewer states, Janowitz has crafted an engaging family drama with a sibling dynamic that is realistic and lived in. With some old Hollywood Easter eggs sprinkled in, this novel will appeal to lovers of women's fiction and family sagas. It is also a most anticipated read of 2022. Next is The Dictionary of Lost Words. This is the story of Esme. Her father is working as part of a team to collect words for the first Oxford English Dictionary. As she grows up, Esme realizes that words and meanings relating to women and commoners' experiences often go unrecorded. And so she begins to search out words for her own dictionary, the Dictionary of Lost Words. Inspired by actual events, author Pip Williams has delved into the archives of the Oxford English Dictionary to tell this highly original story. This is a New York Times bestseller and a Reese Witherspoon's book club pick. My next title to discover this summer is Our Last Days in Barcelona. This is by Chanel Cleaton. This is the fifth book in the ongoing Perez family saga, but you can actually read it as a standalone. This book focuses on Isabel Perez traveling to Barcelona to save her sister Beatrice, but she discovers a shocking family secret, of course. This is from the bestseller author, Chanel Cleaton. She is known for being a master at weaving together stories across dual timelines, and this is no exception. The novel pulses with her signature blend of intrigue, betrayal, and the redemptive power of revealing family secrets. Historical fiction fans will love this novel and its perfectly detailed descriptions of a long gone era. Next up is The Sisters of Night and Fog by Erica Roebuck. Named a most anticipated book of 2022 by many online sites. It is a novel based on the extraordinary true stories of an American socialite, Virginia d'Albert Lake, and a British secret agent, Violette Sasbo, who showed amazing courage during the darkest hours of World War II. It is an impeccably researched and profoundly moving novel that will stay with readers long after the final page. Next up is The Paris Bookseller by Carrie Mayer. This is the dramatic story of how the owner of the famous bookshop Shakespeare and Company fought against incredible odds to bring one of the most important works of the 20th century to the world, that of James Joyce's Ulysses. The Paris Bookseller is the unforgettable true story of Sylvia Beach, a champion of modern literature. It is historical fiction at its best. Voted a much anticipated 2022 novel and a best historical fiction book of 2022. It is also a Reader's Digest best books for women written by female authors. Next is The Spanish Daughter by Lorena Hughes. It is on several lists of books to read now or most anticipated books, including the Washington Post. It is perfect for fans of Julia Alvarez and, what a coincidence, Sylvia Morano Garcia. This exhilarating novel transports you to the lush tropical landscape of 1920s Ecuador. It blends family drama, dangerous mystery, and the real-life history of the coastal town known as the birthplace of cocoa. Deftly written, this is a captivating mystery where, according to Washington Post, The descriptions of cocoa making will leave your mouth watering for chocolate. And what better thing to describe a book so that makes you want to pick it up and read it is that. Next up is The Circus of Wonders by Elizabeth McNeill. This is a spectacular novel about a woman transformed by the arrival of a Victorian Circus of Wonders during the 1860s. Circus of Wonders is a beautifully told story and immersive look at the complex nature between exploitation and empowerment, and the question of what it really means to have control over your own life. This book is rich with historical detail that will transport readers into the grittiness of Victorian England, which is teeming with the very best and, of course, the very worst of humanity. Next is, and I'm very excited about this title, it sounds great, A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons. Debut author Kate Cavari deftly entwines a pulse-pounding mystery with the struggles of a woman in a male-dominated field in 1923 London. Newly minted research assistant Saffron Everleigh attends a dinner party for the University College of London. While there, one of the professor's wives drops to the floor, poisoned by an unknown toxin. The author has created a charming mystery full of twists that are as intriguing and deadly as the plants her character loves. Saffron Everleigh is a sort of sleuth that readers will be eager to make space for on their bookshelves. The novel features academic intrigue, a scientifically suspenseful novel, and an Agatha Christie-like cast of characters. Speaking of Agatha Christie, my next title is The Christie Affair by Nina de Gramont. The Christie Affair is a fictional murder mystery woven around the real-life disappearance of Agatha Christie. Told from the point of view of Christie's husband's mistress, it is intriguing, fast-paced, and elegantly written. For lovers of mystery, romance, and literary fiction. This is a New York Times bestseller, a Reese Witherspoon's book club pick, and is on Goodreads' most anticipated list for 2022. According to the Wall Street Journal, it sizzles from the first sentence. Next up is The Grand Duchess, the last Grand Duchess, pardon me. This is a sweeping novel, takes readers behind the palace walls to see the end of Imperial Russia through the eyes of Olga Romanov, the first daughter of the last Tsar. At turns glittering and harrowing, The Last Grand Duchess is a story about dynasty, duty, love, but above all, it's a story of a family who would choose devotion to each other over anything else, including their own lives. Up next is By Her Own Design. It is the untold true story of Anne Lau. She was Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress designer, a Black woman who was one of the most famous designers of the 20s through into the 60s, only to be forgotten by history. By Her Own Design is an unforgettable novel of determination despite countless obstacles. Richly crafted with glamorous details, this is biographical fiction at its very best. Next up is Mercury Pictures Presents by Anthony Mara. This is the epic tale of Maria Langa, who must reinvent herself to survive, moving from Mussolini's Italy to escape her father's past to 1940s Los Angeles and the world of cinema. Maria experiences conflicting politics, divided loyalties, and jockeying ambitions. This is a timeless story of love, deceit, and sacrifice. It is one of the most anticipated books of 2022. Next is Tobacco Wives by Adele Myers. This is the story of Maddie Skies, set in 1946 Brightleaf, North Carolina, the tobacco capital of the South. She soon learns that Brightleaf isn't quite the carefree paradise that it seems. A trail of misfortune follows many of the women, including substantial health problems. Shedding light on the hidden history of women's activism during the post-war period, at its heart, Tobacco Wives is a deeply human, emotionally satisfying, and dramatic novel about the power of female connection and the importance of seeking truth. It has been named most anticipated book by USA Today, W Magazine, and Reader's Digest. My last two books for you today are Take My Hand by Dolene Perkins Valdez. Inspired by true events that rocked the nation, this is a novel about a Black nurse in post-segregation Alabama who blows the whistle on the terrible injustice done to her patients. Take My Hand is a stirring exploration of accountability and redemption. It is an impressive historical epic, named a most anticipated book of 2022 by Newsweek, Oprah Daily, and NBC News. Lastly comes Mustique Island from best-selling author Sarah McCoy. This is a sun-splashed romp featuring a rich divorcee and her two wayward daughters. Set in 1970s Mustique, the world's most exclusive private island, where Princess Margaret and Mick Jagger were regulars and scandals stayed hidden from the press. This is a thoughtful story of mothers and daughters and desire and identity amid the circus life of Mustique Island. It asks the questions, what do we owe one another and what do we owe ourselves? As one author said, and I thought this was perfect for summer, pair this novel with a Pink Lady cocktail for a blissful literary experience. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is our roundup of titles for You've Got to Read This for this year. I really hope you enjoyed these books and some of them will intrigue you enough to pick them up. Happy reading. And if you have any questions for our panelists, we're here for you.
Questions can be put into the chat or the Q&A. Or if you're feeling brave, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Oh, I've got a hand up. Hold on. Carol, go ahead. You can unmute yourself. We hear you, Carol.
Oh, that's good. So I'm here in the library at the Jewelry Club every Wednesday, 1:30 to 3:30. We've listened to all of you. We really enjoyed it. And would like to know, can we get a copy of all those books? What I mean is a list, not all the books. Where will that be posted or? 'Cause there's many titles there.
There's a list in the chat, but it will be reposted on social media.
Oh, you mean Facebook?
Yes, if that's good for you.
It's good for me.
Everybody like our Facebook.
Pardon me?
Please follow us on Facebook.
Right. All right. So thank you. It was quite informative. Lots of great books.
There's a comment from Debbie Mayman. Says that she loved Looking for Jane. Every woman should read it and it's very timely. Whose book was that? Did one of you know? Who's the author, Debbie? Oh, Elaine Cohen would like to speak. Go ahead, Elaine. You have to unmute yourself, though.
I thought this was so, I put on mute. I hope I worked.
We hear you, Elaine.
Okay, I thought it was really terrific. I really enjoyed this. I learned so much and I've read some of the books and I agree. So I just want to thank you so much. There was one that was nonfiction and I didn't quite get the whole name and the author. And I wonder which one it was. There was nonfiction. It seemed like an interesting one.
Whose pick was it?
That I'm.
It was Danielle's.
Yes, I think it was yours, Danielle. It was nonfiction.
We can't hear you, Danielle.
Oh,
You're
should
not
I?
muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so the book I think that you were looking for, it's called Maiden Voyages, Magnificent Ocean Liners and the Women Who Traveled and Worked Aboard Them by Cian Evans. It's a new book. Elaine, I will make sure that you're on the list for it.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, Carol, your hand is up again. Go right ahead.
I finished reading The Wedding Veil. I'm not sure, Danielle, if you had interviewed the author. Do you know, does that sound familiar? Okay, anybody out there can help me understand the ending. You don't have to say it here, okay? But tell me who you are and I can email you, or you could email me. It was a little confused for me at the end about who's laughing. Jennifer, you read it? You know the ending? Oh, all right.
I'm just sympathizing with your experiences, Carol, because sometimes I read or I'll see like a documentary or a movie, and I'll be like, oh, I don't understand the ending. I'm like, what was that? What was it? What?
Right. It's a story of the Vanderbilts and the Biltmore, and it goes through from the early 1900s, and Cornelia Vanderbilt gets married. Anyway, who out there has read it? Can you email me, please, or put on Facebook? Some of my friends have already reserved the books, so they told me once they've read it. It's a good read, by the way.
Yeah, I think Julia Kelly, when I interviewed her, had recommended it, but I didn't get to that one yet, Carol.
Oh, so maybe that's how I got the title. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
And for the person earlier asking who wrote Looking for Jane, I remember that it was a Simon & Schuster title. It's Heather Marshall is the author.
Elaine, you've got your hand up again, or do you have your hand up still? You're welcome to unmute yourself with another question. Oh, hand has gone down. Okay, I don't see any further questions. Jennifer, would you like to close off for us?
I just wanted to thank everyone for attending. We hope you, as I mentioned, enjoyed some of these picks. Hopefully if you've read some of them, maybe there's some other ones in there that appeal to you and you'll pick them up over the summer. Tell other people about them. As we mentioned, a lot of these were highly anticipated reads. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed them. Until next time.
We will make sure you can get the list at reference also if you want to. Maria will make sure reference has those handouts. I'm going to take the last minute to mega plug Remarkably Bright Creatures. You have to read this.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.